never get my maps quite right in the background. So Moeketsi, have you been on ENCA recently? I'll share with you're on mute, my friend. I'll share with the audience where we first met. Yeah.
Oh, yes. No, you're more than welcome to do so.
Interestingly, if you remember, I was having major visa issues at the time that I know are still, you know, we came right in the end, but it's a journey of several years of pain, heartache. And I remember my final submission for residency, I realized one of the documents said that I was Irish, which I know Ema would be very proud of, but I'm not. We still managed to get it through. Yeah. Because on the British passport, it says Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Yeah, I should be so lucky. I've got some Irish roots.
Of course. Celebrate it.
The Irish are our cousins, Ema. We're very close. A small stretch of water. Yeah. How are we looking for audience members? Oh, I should be 14.
20 participants this stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
14 attendees, and then so that includes the panelists.
Yeah.
We've got Gary Davies. Good morning, Gary. Jamil Jinnah. Nice to see your name again. Nick Webster, Nicola Hards from Virgin. Lovely to see you too. So shall we give it a minute or two, Saul? What do you guys?
Yeah, I think so. Let's give it a couple of minutes and we'll join. Hey, Jamil, great to see you. I know we need to catch up. Hey, Gary. And great to have Virgin so they can tell us when we're going to start flying to London again. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. I have a social life that this is disrupting, so we need to really get that going again. Yeah. Okay, just 90 seconds or so. Okay, so good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar in partnership with Xpatweb, Our World Interrupted Work Visa Risk Impact Survey Unpacked. So I'm not going to steal the thunder from our colleagues at Xpatweb. I'm going to introduce them to you. But essentially, we all know we're living in some quite interesting times, and travel is one of those areas that has been impacted hugely, and perhaps we realize how central and critical it is to all our lifestyles that we've adopted in the last 20 or so years. We felt the impact in the chamber. We've had to change how we operate. We've had to cancel events around Africa and in London. We're keen to understand how this might change, but equally, there's a great deal of impact on visa and international travel. Myself and Cecilia will be hosting from the British Chamber this morning. Cecilia will be feeding in questions from the audience. I'll be steering the panel, and my colleague Ema is in mission control, will be operating some of the polls. Please be aware there's a Q&A button on your Zoom screen, on your desktop, on your iPad, on your phone. Please feel free to fire questions any time. Cecilia will feed those in at an appropriate moment. And please participate in our polls that you will see coming up throughout the presentation. Again, great to collaborate and partner with Xpatweb on this. We have Moeketsi Seboko, from Immigration Manager from Xpatweb, Lerato Mahupela, and Leetasha Govender. Great to have you on board this morning. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can take us through the findings.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you or to everyone that is part of this session. If there are any immigration service providers, I welcome you as well, and you're more than welcome to to ask questions or share information if you have any at any time during the session or after the session. We want to make this as interactive as possible. Just to give you a bit of a background, the reason why we conducted this survey was primarily due to interest from most of our clients and some organizations that we have relationships with. They wanted to understand exactly what will be the impact of this pandemic on corporates and business at large. So that was the objective actually behind this survey. We just want to thank everyone that participated in the survey, and we're here to share the results and unpack the results with all of you. Without wasting time, I will hand over to my colleague Lerato, who will take you through the results. Over to you, Lerato.
Thank you, Moeketsi. Good morning to everyone that has joined us this morning. I will jump straight to our survey results. On our first slide, as you may all see, 152 participants participated in the survey, and all those companies were JSE-listed companies and large multinational groups operating across Africa. So on this next slide, the first question we asked was mostly relevant, which is, when is your expatriate employees visa expiring? Did it expire prior to the lockdown announcement, or during the lockdown, or prior to June 2020? So 44% participants indicated that they have employees with visa that have expired or due to expire June 2020. And 73% of that 44% indicated that they will extend those visas, which is a high number. And it means that Home Affairs will be very and extremely busy. On the next slide, we ask, what is the passport status of your expatriate employee and their immediate family members? From the survey, we gathered that 23% participants indicated that their employees' passports are full, and 20% indicated that they are soon to expire, and 4% indicated they have expired passport. This is so important because you cannot apply for a visa without your passport or travel without a valid passport. So it is advisable that those expatriate employees reach their embassies to get their passport extended, because this is a pre-requirement for any visa application.
Yeah, Lerato, let me just perhaps just pause you there. I mean, some quite concerning statistics, but maybe we can share our first poll with the audience. If we just pause there. Thanks. Ima? So for those that have joined us, have COVID restrictions impacted on how you manage your expats? It'd be quite interesting. Certainly the Chamber, we've had a lot of calls from people in various parts of the world, but certainly here, in terms of having a great deal of questions and concerns around how to navigate this. And again, in the Q&A session, feel free to comment and share some examples of issues that you may have had, or even good news stories. And perhaps we can just look at those results and then we can carry on. So interesting. So 50% hasn't had an impact at all.
Yes.
50% are concerned about how to manage that going forward in the future. And I think anecdotally, from a Chamber perspective, we've seen quite a few incidents and issues. But no, thank you for that. Carry on, Lerato.
Thank you, Leon. So on the next slide, we ask a question, where are your expats currently during this lockdown? And 66% of the expatriate employers indicated most are in South Africa. That might be due that their families are with them, and 19% are outside South Africa with their family members. And 9% are outside South Africa, they are on home leave. That could be due to that some returned home during the lockdown, or some went back home prior to the lockdown, and 6% were others. So in this slide, it indicates 37% employers require new expat as soon as the lockdown is uplifted, meaning that some have submitted their application abroad at the South African embassies, and some are waiting for the outcome, and others are waiting for the embassy to open. We were surprised by this high number, and we did a follow-up question where we asked which embassies will these expats will be applying from. Across the board, there were 34 different countries, and I've highlighted the top 10 countries, which is Germany, China, USA. These embassies are well known to receive a large quantity of visa applications. So it is important for expatriate employers, for an assignee to prepare ahead of time so that you can be ahead of queue and to ensure a streamlined process. So they can look at your application as soon as possible. Even though some embassies are not highlighted as quietly extremely busy, they are not on the top 10. It doesn't mean that you are safe. Those embassies are not that busy. Most embassies, I can guarantee you, they are very difficult. And as an experienced embassy liaison officer in my team, I know it is very important to get a good company that has a solid and long-standing relationship with the Department of Home Affairs. So on the next slide, 9% indicated that they lost expats due to the COVID-19 situation, and 84 indicated they are not affected by revoked visas. So this is obviously linked to the directive issued by the Department of Home Affairs that if anyone came from high-risk countries, that is specifically Iran and China, and have not activated those visas, meaning they have not used those visas, those visas will be revoked and they will need to apply for a visa again if they need to come back to SA. So there were participants that indicated that they do not use a formal system to track their expatriate employee. So I thought it would be interesting to show you our in-house immigration system. This system, it will help an expatriate employer to track the assignees' passport renewals, the assignees' visa expiry dates. It also helps with tracking them across geographical areas, and it's flexible to the client's needs. I've included some screenshots to give you an indication of what that looks like. From the slide, you can see an employer has employees from various countries, and that is the status of the visa application. On this slide shows active application in South Africa, meaning expat coming to work in South Africa, their progress and the expiry of their passports. Thank you, Leon. I'm handing over to my colleague, Moeketsi.
Thanks, Lerato. Thank you.
Thank you, Lerato. This is talks to the last question that we asked in our survey, where we asked employers if they have any South Africans working abroad, and 38% of the respondent confirmed that they have South Africans working abroad. This is important and relevant, especially now that Home Affairs has announced that South Africans who are working abroad or who needs to travel abroad for essential services, they will be allowed to do so. However, there has to be a process that is followed, and you will need to prove that you are traveling for work purposes, to study, for family reunion, or for medical purposes. Oh,
and we can see that Moeketsi, we're just putting up the poll there for our audience to see
okay.
the views on the opportunity of what you're outlining there. And a question that I have that will come to is, it's great to be able to travel, but what are the mechanisms to do that? And we've got our friends from Virgin on, who perhaps can give us some answers towards the end.
Yes.
But essentially, are there air bridges? Do we foresee flights coming? And I won't hijack your presentation, but we can perhaps come back and do that. So if everyone could perhaps look at that poll and share your views there, an understanding of what is available. Okay. Those results are coming through quite slowly. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
So there's a low understanding of the requirements, which perhaps you're going to go into some detail on, Moeketsi. Small percentage making use of the opportunity, then a large percentage really not being applicable to them. But so you were there going through the requirements and the understandings and what you needed to do.
Yes. When Home Affairs initially announced, this relaxation of restrictions, they introduced a process as well on what you will need to submit in order for them to provide you with an authorization to travel. One of those requirements were a letter of admissibility from the host country. So it will be either the embassy of the host country in SA or the immigration officials of the host country issuing you with a letter confirming that you will be admitted in that country when you land. However, Home Affairs then came back, I think on the 29th, and announced that as from the 1st of June, no authorization will be required from Home Affairs. However, airlines will require that you prove that you will be admitted in that country where you are going to, and a letter of admissibility is still a requirement. We have assisted few of our clients with that letter. It's a very difficult process. Some embassies are closed, so it's a very difficult process. We're still finding our feet. It's still new, so yeah, we are taking guidance as well on that on the process as well in conjunction with DERCO. So that's what is the status with regards to South Africans who need to travel abroad. Lerato, can you move to the next slides, please? Next steps. What we did once the survey was concluded, we shared the results with the Department of Home Affairs. Of course, we omitted the participants' details, and Home Affairs did come back to us and acknowledged receipt of that email, and they made an undertaking that they will interrogate the survey and come back to us if there are any follow-up questions. And the indication is they will come back with many questions, which we will then put forward to corporates as well to complete. So everyone must look forward to a follow-up survey, which then will also be shared with Home Affairs to help the Department of Home Affairs issue proper directive on an informed advice of corporates. So it's very important that corporate participate in such surveys, because those results are indeed important to the Department of Home Affairs, and it's that information that helps the Department of Home Affairs to ensure that they issue directives that are convenient and that are responsive to the needs of corporates. I will then hand over to Leetasha to talk to you about the operations at the Department of Home Affairs.
Thank you, Moeketsi. So just to recap on what is happening, when South Africa downgraded to level 3 of the national lockdown, we hoped that the Department of Home Affairs Immigration Division would resume most of their visa activities. However, following recent announcements, the Department of Home Affairs and related visa and permitting offices such as VFS will remain closed during the level 3 lockdown period. I was actually quite lucky to have visited Home Affairs head office in Pretoria earlier this week. From what I can tell you, most of the sections are back at work. The employees are still working in shifts, so it's not full capacity as we hoped, but the people that are there are in high spirits. I think what we need to remember is at the end of the day, those employees are people just like the rest of us, and government, Home Affairs, and the people are trying to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic as best as they can. I suppose it is a relief to an extent that the officials are back in the office. They've mostly returned to tackle the current backlog that they face. So outcomes won't be available yet. Senior officials are busy planning and implementing new procedures and policies for when these visa streams open again.
Sorry, Leetasha, I'm just drawing the audience's attention to the poll there as you're going through. What is the status of your matters pending due with the Department of Home Affairs? Just be interesting to see people's views there. But equally, by all means, carry on.
Sure. So dealing with this backlog, Home Affairs won't be able to keep the outcomes on hand for too long. So we are anticipating, or more so we hope, that VFS will reopen soon. If they do, it'll probably be only for collections. When Home Affairs announced, Home Affairs announced that all visas which have expired during this lockdown period will be seen as legal and valid up until the 31st of July. And we can hope that VFS and other permitting offices will open before the 31st of July, or when the country is downgraded to level 2, whichever comes first. We hope that this will happen so that there won't be a bottleneck, or Home Affairs and VFS won't be overwhelmed with new applications. Just looking at the poll results, a lot of people saying there's a split between overdue but not urgent, overdue and urgent, not overdue, 20%. And just looking at the overdue and urgent, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are frustrated with things being urgent and overdue and not being able to liaise with the Department of Home Affairs or anybody to give them some sort of feedback or timeline to them receiving their outcome. What I can say is we at Xpatweb, myself, Moeketsi, and Lerato, we are all ex-Home Affairs employees. And we have a very, very good relationship with the Department of Home Affairs and its officials. We also have a very good relationship with the embassies abroad. Our ears are always to the ground. We work tirelessly to provide our clients with relevant and up-to-date information. So yeah, thank you so much. Back to Moeketsi.
Thank you, Tasha. Just in closing, I just want to say that recently, I think we have been receiving a huge number of calls, and there has been panic in the corporate world, where most of corporates are panicking on the status of the expatriates who are already in SA. Most corporates are very concerned that visas are expiring, passports are expiring, and Home Affairs is closed. No one knows what's happening, and what will happen to their expats. I just want to say to all of you that there is no need to panic. The Department of Home Affairs has issued a directive to this effect, and they have extended visas that will expire anytime during lockdown. So anyone whose visas expires or has expired or will expire before the 31st of July, they must just be rest assured that their visas are deemed as legal. We expect Home Affairs to issue a directive that will address the very same issue beyond to the 31st of July. So if then VFS is not opened, chances are that Home Affairs will extend everyone's visas automatically. And if then VFS is opened, then people will be allowed to submit applications, even though their visas have expired, without getting the authorization from the Inspectorate, in a Form 20 authorization. So everyone must just stay calm. All foreign nationals who were legally admitted in this country will remain legally until Home Affairs, announced otherwise. Thank you.
Thanks. So, I mean, I've got a few questions and observations. And Moeketsi, we met in a green room at ENCA a few years ago as I was battling with my very own visa issues.
Yes.
What do you see the impact on this of, I have neighbors and friends who have existing outstanding issues with Home Affairs. People that have been here for 2 years waiting for that residency to come through or the spousal visa to be extended. Do you see an impact on this, given that Home Affairs isn't going to be open until July the 31st, and then it's going to have a series of urgent issues to deal with? Just perhaps give us your sense and views there.
Of course, Home Affairs is going to be overwhelmed, Leon. However, we know for a fact that the skeleton staff that's currently working, they are working through the backlog. And we expect that, by the time they open to full functionality, that, they would have gone through a number of applications that are already submitted. But Home Affairs is Home Affairs, and there is always that inevitable need, I don't know why, to be incompetent. But there will be applications that fall through the cracks. There will be applications that get lost. There will be applications that are delayed. So, what we do is when we get such queries, we engage the department. We expedite such applications. So if there's anyone who's experiencing those, they are more than welcome to contact us for guidance, and then we will gladly assist where we can. But yeah, Home Affairs problems will not go away. They might be compounded even more, after lockdown has been lifted.
So I've actually got several people reaching out to me, including headmasters of some of the leading schools in South Africa, wondering when they can get their borders to return, as in, the overseas students that come in. And if we look at this more broadly with a British Chamber lens, 21% of higher education students in the UK are from overseas.
Yeah.
So without you commenting perhaps on this global challenge, what are you sensing and seeing? And if any of our distinguished audience can help as well in terms of when we can get some international mobility back into the country, because it's all very well saying we can go and have a visa to leave the country. How do we do that physically? Then secondly, what about the inbound piece? So just perhaps the three of you could give us your observations and comments on how you see that coming out. And again, welcome any comments from the audience.
Okay, it's a challenge, Leon, and it's a challenge that's dependent on not only South Africa, but from the sending country as well. So there is no clear answer to that, to be honest. The Minister of Education hasn't said anything about foreign students who left the country before lockdown. We know that schools are opening next week, but I think a challenge of foreign students still lingers, and there isn't any clear direction from the ministry on how those students will be dealt with. But the assumption is, there is an online platform that they will need to go through in order to continue with studies until we know exactly what is the government's direction on foreign students.
I'm being recorded, so I'm going to tread marginally carefully about some of the briefings from the Education Minister. But as a father of two, it's not necessarily been 100% clear how to proceed. So I think the schools thing is something that we're all cognizant of, and actually it's probably a small portion of the Home Affairs workload. Yeah. What about work? I mean, I've had the chief execs from all member organizations, but also big South African organizations saying, to address the new demands of this new world post-COVID, I need skills in the country that don't presently exist so that we can expand our operation and execute, from an AI perspective, a technical engineering perspective. And let's look at some of the healthcare challenges. We need certain skill sets, geneticists, epidemiologists, microbiologists. What about getting talent into the country? Are we going to be fast tracking critical skills visas, temporary visas, or are we going to be stumbling up against the same challenges that we've had, well, certainly since I've been in South Africa?
Wow, Leon.
I'm giving you easy questions this morning. It's not the easy stuff.
I wish the answer to that was as simple. Knowing Home Affairs, there is still this challenge will still be there with us. I don't see the urgency in prioritizing, especially critical skills work visas, and of course, I don't see the need of critical skills deficiency in SA going away. Actually, we will need more skills after this. Even currently, we know that we've imported Cuban doctors, solely because we don't have the skills that's needed to fight this pandemic. There will be a need for critical and essential or scarce skill in SA, but Home Affairs officials mostly on the ground, there's a disconnect between the executives and the foot soldiers on the ground in terms of understanding exactly the needs of the country and why critical skills is important for this country, and why such applications should take priority over any application. So we hope that the department will heed this call. We will continuously engage the department on behalf of our clients, and we do engage them where there are issues with embassies, especially where applications are being delayed or unnecessarily queried. We do engage the head office, and they have intervened in many cases, and such applications have been issued expeditiously and successfully. So the problems won't go away. They will always be there. It's because it's Home Affairs.
Yeah. Okay. Perhaps, Cecilia, you can take some questions from the audience there. Thanks, Moeketsi.
Yes, I've had a few people send in via email before the webinar, so thank you for that. Jamil, I'm going to get to your second. Just first, a quick one from Nick Webster from HSBC. I did see you are on the webinar currently. Nick had a work visa, or has a work visa to be in the UK, but as an SA passport holder. His family joined him in the UK simply because they could get a flight out from SA, but he could not get a flight to SA from the UK, and they had nowhere else to live. All of them do have a valid right to live in the UK for this period, And of course, as South African nationals also can be in South Africa. So Nick, I hope I'm getting it right. I put your hand up if you want to speak live, but he basically wants to know, will the visas be honored when he returns to South Africa? As I think, Nick, you have full right to move between the two countries if you've got valid UK visas, which I understand you do have. And so does the rest of your family. So I think you should be okay, but we can ask the rest of the panel whether Nick has anything to be worried about when he starts moving between the UK and South Africa again.
Hi there. Can you hear me, guys?
We can, Nick. Good morning.
Yes, just a slight correction to what you said.
Yeah.
I'm a UK passport holder.
Okay.
Been with HSBC 5.5 years, so had a new 5-year general work visa agreed in December last year. My wife's on a spousal visa, and our 2 children are studying on study visas. We're in Cape Town. Now, I was on business for HSBC in the UK at the time of the lockdown, so I've been, and I'm still here now, I've been stranded here ever since. My family were back in Cape Town, and it was getting increasingly stressful, particularly for our young children. We were 3 months apart. They finally joined me a few days ago on a UK government repatriation flight, because it didn't seem like there was any near-term prospect of me being able to return to South Africa, and it was getting very difficult to manage. So I guess the question is, where do we stand now in terms of being able to return to South Africa, even as and when international travel resumes? What is the status of our visas? We've seen something gazetted saying they've technically been revoked, but what do you think happens? Thank you.
Okay, it's
Thanks
you, Nick,
for clarifying that, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, for that question. Yeah, that's another panic that most foreign nationals who were issued with visas and who traveled abroad before lockdown find themselves in. Visas that were revoked is visas that were issued in China, is visas that were issued in Iran. And it's visas that were not activated, meaning that it's a visa is just a document issued by our embassies abroad that gives you a right to travel to South Africa and present yourself at before the immigration officers. Now, when you get admitted, when they stamp your passport, a visa gets activated. Okay, so visas that were not activated were then revoked. Again, we are not sure exactly what does revocation entail in this instance, because people will already have visas in their passports. Will they be allowed to or will they be required to submit new applications? Will the revocation be rescinded after lockdown? We have no idea. However, anyone whose visas were activated, anyone who entered South Africa and whose visas were activated and left the country, those visas remain valid. And once international travel is allowed, you will be allowed to return to SA with that visa.
Yeah.
So Nick, you can be comfortable that your status remains, and that as soon as you are able to travel back to the country, you can use that same visa to travel back to SA together with your family.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Perhaps we can connect you with Moeketsi afterwards as well, so you can have any follow-up conversations.
Yeah, appreciate
that. Thanks, Nick. Was there something from Jamil, Cecilia?
There was. I think, Moeketsi, you've addressed it earlier, but it is around the standard entry period that British nationals particularly are are used to getting, if you enter South Africa, you can stay here for 3 months. That can often be extended to 6 months. And Jamil's question was around that 3-month period. He is aware of the fact that government has extended any and all ability to stay in the country up until the 31st of July, because many people will now have exceeded that 3-month period with the lockdown. Jamil was wondering, though, whether there is a possibility and whether there have been any murmurings about that, whether that could be extended past July 31st, that grace period. And particularly bearing in mind that air travel is still pretty much locked down at this stage. Is there any scope for that to be extended? And also, a very good question, is anyone particularly advising government on this? And are they open to consultation on this topic?
Okay. Can I add? Can you hear me? Can I just
Yes.
very good summary. Just to give you the basis of the question, which kind of ties in a little bit to what Leon had mentioned earlier, is that, you know, generally we're from the UK, but we've been based in this part of the world for about 10 years. Generally resident in Zimbabwe. And come to South Africa regularly for business reasons. In the last 3 years, you know, our children are now at boarding school in South Africa. During the lockdown, we opted to stay in South Africa rather than leave. So I'm still on my, which is still valid, 3-month visa, which I understand can be extended for another 3 months. My wife had put in for her extension just before lockdown. So I think we're reasonably comfortable, and what you've said has been very, very helpful. The question, you know, highlighted was more to say that if travel that Leon mentioned doesn't really pick up for 3, 6, 9 months, for example, nobody really knows. Is the government or Home Affairs looking at a way to not so much come up with a new visa, but perhaps having a longer extension period? Because normally I could just go out and come back in again on a British passport. So is that going to be a possibility just until air travel resumes with some kind of normality? And then the second, you know, as was said very well, was that are you guys or people like you in consultation with Home Affairs in a very detailed way? And do you think they will be receptive to the on-the-ground issues you are hearing from your client base?
Thank you, Jamal. I was in a discussion yesterday with one of the officials at from Home Affairs, and we were discussing, you know, COVID and its impact and how Home Affairs is dealing. So it was just a long discussion. But one of the things that we discussed was what will happen beyond the 31st of July. And Home Affairs is still engaging on that. We need to appreciate that you know, they will be to widen their engagement with different ministries, with different embassies. But chances are, and this is from that official, that the concession will be extended beyond the 31st of July. So people whose visas will expire, you know, during this period, will have, you know, their visas extended beyond the 31st of July. But we don't know until when. But I think normality will dictate that that will be extended until people will be able to travel. So for as long as you can't travel out of the country, your visa will remain extended. You must remember that it's only travel for repatriation purposes that's only allowed. So if your country cannot repatriate, if you can't be repatriated, then you will be allowed to stay in the country, and you will enjoy the legal status that that your visa dictates. We are in consultation with Home Affairs, part of this survey speaks to that. Remember, these results will then be shared with Home Affairs. It's such feedback that helps Home Affairs to draft regulations and concessions that will be beneficial to corporate. So it's not an easy consultation, but there is a consultation at the end of the day, and some of these things Home Affairs do take into account.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very helpful.
Okay, thanks. I see we've got Sharon, the chairman of the SA Chamber in the UK, on, my colleague. We've also got Eleanor Williams, former of the DIT, and we've got some of our friends from Virgin. I'm just wondering, but I won't put you on the spot, but if you can raise your hands in terms of if you have any information to share around travel and when we might see that opening. Thanks, Sharon. I'm just going to bring you live now. Thank you. Yeah. Hi, Sharon. We can hear you now.
Hi, everybody. Very interesting webinar. Thank you very much for your contribution. Moeketsi, there's some great insights that we've had. So thanks to all of you on the panel. Leon, I'm not the right person to give that kind of information. I think you say Eleanor Williams is on the line. On the things, she would probably be better than me to give some further updates on what emergency travel solutions have been provided. But I know there are Mercy flights that have been occurring. In terms of when travel will come back to normal, I have no idea.
Yeah, sure. And are you hearing from people stranded in the UK, Sharon, from your membership base?
Yes, yeah, we are still within the membership and within the South African communities in the UK and globally. We, within our EXCO team, are still working on getting those people, in combination with the High Commissioner, getting those people back home. So there are still, I heard a number the other day, but it is a good few hundred, if not 1,000 or so, that are still stranded globally.
Yeah. No, thanks, Sharon.
So there's definitely a lot of trauma, personal trauma happening for those people that are stuck wherever they don't want to do, as we heard from two of your listeners earlier.
Yeah, no, Nick's insights were not the first I've heard. I'm sorry to hear that. I'm hearing quite a few. And I'm just wondering, we've collaborated very much with BUSA, with Business for South Africa, with the Solidarity Fund in London and here. Are we as a business community doing enough and being sufficiently vocal to challenge Home Affairs and government on this? I mean, my chairman here, Mel Brooks of G4S, is constantly raising the visa issue as one of the barriers to investment and growing our economy here. What do you think? What could we be doing more of as the voice of business?
I think it's a very, very valid question, Leon, and I think there is a space that we as the two chambers can do to help with anything from streamlining visa processes. I mean, at the moment, for example, if somebody here wants to renew their South African passport, they must budget a year to get that new passport. I mean, that is just absolutely ridiculous. They could fly to South Africa and do it there, but of course they can't do that now. So now they're saying that to renew your South African passport is going to take longer than a year because the offices are all closed. So there's definitely something that I think business needs to make aware to the government, the impact they're having on human beings and their ability to do their job and to move when we are allowed to in the way we should. But going back to sort of not so much directly Mel's point, but more to the point of what can the two chambers do? I do see that we have a place to support helping government understand what can be done, how it can be done, and possibly calling on the private sector and specialists like those we've got on the panel to actually help us help them, that there is a way out of it. I think you're dealing with people that this is not their problem every day. We've got business people who are specialists in these spaces that the chambers can call upon and say, yes, we can do it, and this is the solution. There's no point giving them the problem. I think we need to together find a solution first. And if we can go with a solution, I think we're in a much stronger position together.
Yeah. Thanks, Sharon. I appreciate that. Was there another question from the audience there, Cecilia?
Well, we've just actually got Nicola Hart saying that she's happy to talk about Virgin Atlantic's hopes for flights from London Heathrow and the USA. So I'm going to put Nicola on.
Yeah.
I think we could all use some good news.
Yeah.
Sorry, are we getting Nicola on here?
Am I
Nicola,
muted?
Let me try. I think she may have just dropped off at the critical moment. Perhaps Lauren can. I know we've got Lauren Blaine there.
Hi,
yes.
everyone.
Yeah, hi, Lauren.
Hi. Nice to see all your faces again.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, so we feel like commercial flights have obviously been suspended until the 1st of July. So that's indefinite. And we're hoping to try and get something from government soon. We're anticipating maybe August, September. That's kind of where we're looking at this stage.
Okay. I mean, that's actually more positive than I've been hearing murmurs of. I think aspirationally, end of July, August, people were hoping for, but a worst case scenario that has been muted as tourism and flights to kick back in fully by February next year. I hope you, without putting you on the spot or holding you accountable, what are your thoughts there, Lauren?
Yeah, I hope it's not going to be that far, really. I hope it's not. Personally, I don't think it's going to be that late into 2021. We have already started we're going to start our Orlando flights and into LAX. So we have started doing some of that already. And we've got cargo flights going 3 times a week out of Johannesburg. So we definitely are seeing something happening. We're very positive about things, and I don't foresee it happening in 2021. I think our skies are still going to be booming in 2020, but obviously later into the year.
Good. So I can start planning my socials in London for dinners in September. Fantastic. And sorry, Nicola, Lauren may have covered it, but we just lost you. Good to have you. Good to speak to you. Hi.
Guys again, and thanks again for this chat. We obviously have a lot of corporates that are stuck overseas, so very interesting conversations. So thanks for that. And yeah, as Lauren said, hopefully by August we'll be into America, London into America, that is. And then yeah, for Johannesburg, I think it's going to be a little bit slower. I think if you want to be realistic, maybe September, like Lauren said. And yeah, we have been able to help the UK, not completely us alone, British Airways and South African Airways. I think we've been able to get about 5,000 British travelers back home. So that's always good news. And wherever we can, we are helping. We've obviously had to restructure our entire company, as you've probably seen in the news. It's affected us massively, as it has most airlines. And so yeah, we're just trying to figure out these new waters and find our new way of working.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. We're looking forward to flying with you again. And just an observation on the domestic travel and the flights. Who do you know who's operating? And
yes, so
go ahead.
Yeah, so most of the domestic airlines have sent out their new procedures of flying. Mango, I don't think they're up and running yet, but SemAir has sent out some information and comms on their domestic flights, and I think Kalula have sent out some information. On the 1st of June, I can tell you we weren't ready. The domestic side of things, I think it came as a bit of a shock and a bit of a surprise. So a lot of us weren't ready, but the bookings are starting to come through. I've spoken to Investec. A lot of the corporates have started booking again. A lot of hotels are opening up. So this is really positive for the travel industry, because we were really on our knees for a long time. So it's starting to open up, and hoping it will just keep picking up.
Fantastic. Now that's good to hear, and I think for me, certainly traveling back into the office again last week and this week. I can feel business starting to pump. It's going to take some time and it's going to be different, but obviously there's increased energy and activity, and perfect timing. We enter the last 5 minutes of our session. So perhaps I could invite any concluding final questions, and as they're coming up, perhaps going around our panelists to see if you have any concluding remarks. Are there some questions there, Cecilia, you wanted to put in?
Not particular questions. Just what I've gathered from some comments and from everybody, a few questions, is I think people are generally also wondering, right before, as lockdown sort of unfolded at different times, but within the month of March, really, for most countries globally, there were some funny announcements around the movement of people, which had everyone in a bit of a spin. Then lockdown unfolded. We all had to wait and to see how that's going to happen, and it's still unfolding. And I think a lot of people are just wondering whether there is going to be a period of grace and some out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to home affairs from various countries, embassies, moving about again, because the assumption is obviously that everyone is aware of the global situation and what had been happening. But I think also a lot of us personally, I mean, I've been through many visa processes, but a lot of people have just run up against very inflexible, rigid treatment at home affairs and embassies. Therefore, there is now a bit of a general anxiety and panic around, will people actually apply some flexibility when they look back on this period, and when they are now questioning, why did I go there? Why did I not return here? That sort of a thing. So that's what I'm picking up from a lot of our people is questions around that. Will home affairs and embassies be flexible when they look back on this?
I think that's a great question to take as you give your concluding comments, the three of you. Thanks, Cecilia.
Yes, that's a very good observation, Cecilia, and it's not clear what will happen after lockdown has been lifted, but it's prudent and imperative, especially for Home Affairs, to have a sense of urgency and to understand that there is a backlog already on international travel, that when embassies and VFS and the head office becomes fully operational, that there will be a huge traffic of applications. So we hope that they are using this time to plan for that period when there will be high volume of applications. We've seen in our presentation different embassies that will be busy. We hope that Home Affairs will send enough resources to those embassies to help with any backlog that's foreseeable, and we hope that Home Affairs will come to the party and assist corporates to meet their business needs. Of course, where we can, as always, we will engage Home Affairs where applications are deemed to be urgent. Of course, such will need to be accompanied by a good motivation why this particular application needs to jump the queue. But we will take the department head on. We have a good relationship. It's not a very adversarial relationship at all, and we have the best interest of our clients, and we act on their best interest. So I guess it's a wait and see game. Let's wait for lockdown to be lifted. Let's see if Home Affairs come with plans that will be beneficial and talk to the corporate needs. Thank you.
Thanks, Mo.
And I'll just Just
Sure.
sorry, Leon. Sharon, you mentioned that there are some of your colleagues or relationships that are waiting for a year to receive a South African passport. If you don't mind, and through you, Leon, we can discuss this offline. Maybe then let's see if there's any guidance we can provide in that regard. It's crazy that a South African should wait for a year for a travel document. It doesn't make sense at all.
Sure, we'll connect you with Sharon and her team. And Leetasha, Lerato, any concluding comments or observations from yourself?
Just thank you, Leon, for this opportunity. I hope everyone received this session very well. It was quite informative, insightful, and it will help them with their expatriate employees. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you.
And just to basically echo my colleagues' sentiments, thank you so much for having us. And please, if anybody has anything, connect with us offline. Let us help you engage. We understand there's massive panic and anxiety. We're feeling it as well. And we're all, like I said earlier, just trying to find our footing. Home Affairs as well. And I know they are doing their best to find ways forward that'll benefit everybody and help everybody through the process seamlessly. So yeah, thank you again.
Optimistic notes. Cecilia, any final, you set us up nicely there, but any final observations from yourself?
I think it's just nice to also hear from our members Xpatweb that you are working and you are engaging at the highest levels to try and at least bring some certainty, but to also advise government on what public sentiment is and what people are most worried about and the realities on the ground, which I'm sure can easily get lost. So I think it's reassuring just to see you guys are busy with this. And to know that, you've got the most up-to-date information. I get that even for you guys, it must be frustrating at times. And, we tend not to get very speedy answers from government, but if anyone can get them, I think you are best positioned to do so. So thank you for the support also during this time and for being engaged with the Chamber and with our fellow members.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks you to Cecilia for co-hosting with me. Thanks Ima for mission control and coordinating the polls, and to Leslie for getting us all in the right place at the right time and herding the cats, and always Venice behind the scenes, our operational backbone. And a big thanks to Xpatweb for partnering with us on this series, and importantly to our members for joining us. And we are here to help you. We are here to be a proactive voice of business to challenge government, increasingly in this post-COVID world, to challenge them constructively so that we can ensure that our businesses can thrive. And we're going to thrive more effectively if we can be with our families and loved ones and travel more freely. So a subject very close to all of our hearts here. We will be monitoring this and reporting on it, and very much look forward to communicating with you all in the next few days about our next webinar and event series. Thank you, everybody. Let's get stuck back into work at level 3, and Virgin, I'm going to be booking my flights this afternoon for August. I'm looking forward to it. And I just remember this is recorded, something about free upgrades. So thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you,
Cheers.
the Chamber.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.